My name is Ashley Old, and the name of my practice is Old Family Medicine of Carmel. And today we are going to discuss weight loss strategies with a focus on how to cut carbohydrates from your diet. First, I want to begin by saying that weight loss is very complicated. Weight loss is, and weight gain for that matter, is physical, it's emotional, it's psychological, it's stress related, it's hormonal. There are so many facets to the weight gain and weight loss journey, and every person's journey is very individualized. So the treatment of weight gain or obesity is really hard to boil down to one thing. And a lot of people even self-medicate with food, and that takes you down a whole different road. But in the end, regardless of what's causing your weight gain, if you can take in fewer calories than you're burning off, you will lose weight. It's just simple math. If you take in less than you're burning off, you will absolutely lose weight. And one of the most efficient ways to do that, and one of the most physiologically appropriate ways to do that, is by cutting carbohydrates from your diet. Carbohydrates, by definition, are a molecule that contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the hydrogen and oxygen are in the same ratio of carbohydrates as they are in water, which is why it's called carbohydrates. But they essentially they come in two forms, complex and simple, and they're essentially sugar molecules. Complex carbohydrates are multiple different sugar molecules strung together, and a simple or refined carbohydrate is a single sugar molecule. But all carbs in the end get digested down into sugar. And they get digested initially in your mouth. Your saliva contains an enzyme called amylase that starts to break down carbohydrates right then and there. So they get absorbed instantly. So they're a great source of instant energy. And they also cause an instant release of insulin from your pancreas. They cause an instant reaction in your pancreas that releases insulin, and that insulin attaches to that sugar in your bloodstream and takes it into the muscle where it can be used for energy. So insulin essentially allows your body to absorb the sugar and use it. But if you don't use it all, it will end up getting stored either in your liver as glycogen or ultimately as fat on your body. I'm not a big fan of cutting carbohydrates completely out of your diet. Your body needs carbohydrates. Your brain and your heart preferentially use carbohydrates for energy. So when you completely cut carbs, and there are some very, very low carb diets out there that work initially because insulin essentially goes down to zero. And they're also more low calorie. When you're eating foods that contain only protein and fat, you can only eat so much of them, so you end up with a lower calorie diet. So the absolutely no carb diets work up front, but they are really difficult to sustain. It limits the number of foods you can eat dramatically. You end up eating a lot of fatty foods, sometimes cholesterol-laden foods, and it's just difficult to avoid foods with no carbs. So I don't like the completely no carb diets just for sustainability reasons, but also because it can leave you feeling really sluggish over time, mostly because your brain and heart rely on carbohydrates for an energy source. If you get a third of your calories from carbs, you're eating fairly low carb and will also be able to dramatically reduce insulin levels and control your insulin response. So the way to do that, just to do the simple math, if you're eating 1,500 calories a day, a third of that is 500 calories. So you can get 500 calories a day from carbohydrates. 1 gram of carbohydrates contains 4 calories. So if you divide 4 into 500, that's 125. So you can have 125 grams of carbohydrates a day. And to do it another way, if you're a 1,200 calorie a day person, a third of that would be 400 calories. Divide 4 into 400 and you get 100. So 100 grams of carbohydrates a day would be a third of the calories if you're on a 1,200 calorie diet. If you're looking to cut carbohydrates from your diet, you first have to know where to find them in your diet. So I think everybody knows starches and sweets, but I'm going to kind of go through some specifics. So the starchy foods are almost all carbohydrate, and they tend to be also sometimes often low in nutrients. So some of these, if you can cut them completely, would be great. So starchy foods: white bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, corn. Those are the big 5 starches. They contain almost all the calories come from carbohydrates almost completely. So ideally you could eliminate everything that's white in that category. And there seems to also be a perception out there that if you use the whole wheat product, that is going to be just fine. But in the end, it's really not. It's still carbohydrates. So the first thing you have to know is that when you read a food label, if you think you're eating the wheat version of the product for health reasons, make sure the first ingredient says whole wheat on it or whole wheat flour. Because if it says enriched wheat flour, you're still just getting a refined carbohydrate that's getting absorbed into your system immediately as sugar. And then the other side of the carbohydrate food groups would be the sweets. So everybody knows what sweets are. They're all, sugar is in candy, cakes, pies, all the sweet foods. Sugary sweetened beverages are a really big source of sugar that gets absorbed instantly into your system and causes a big insulin response. Breakfast cereal, almost all sugar. Salty, crunchy snacks like pretzels, chips, crackers, those are almost all carbohydrates. Some of them have a lot of fat in them too, but very little good nutritional value. And then fruit. Fruit can be tricky. I hate to look a patient in the eye and tell them they can't have fruit. But some fruits are better than others. And if you choose the low glycemic index fruits, meaning the ones that don't get a big insulin response, will be fairly safe. So berries are always safe. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries. All of those are pretty safe. Bananas are probably a big offender. They're much more pure sugar. Some of the citrus fruits are pure sugar, so you have to be careful with those. Melon can be a problem sometimes. So fruit is also healthy. I don't want to tell people they can't eat fruit, but if you're going to eat fruit, eat it with a protein source so that it slows down the absorption of the fruit sugar into your system and you avoid that big insulin response. One of the primary things you have to know if you're trying to manipulate your diet so that you can lose weight is how many calories you're taking in. A lot of patients ask me how many calories do I need, and that's a really complicated question to answer because everybody needs a different amount of calories depending on their energy expenditure, their inborn, their innate metabolism, what their current weight is. Genetics play a role. So it's really hard to say how many calories you need every day, but it's fairly safe to say that it's going to be somewhere between 1,200 and 1,800, which is a really broad range. But you have to know how to count calories to know how many you're taking in. And in order to do that, you have to read food labels. You have to measure your portions and then add it all up. So you have to also include things like condiments. If you're cooking with olive oil, you've got to add that in there. So initially you have to get pretty scientific about how to count the calories, but in the end it's all about measuring portion sizes and reading those food labels to find out how many calories you're taking in. Also on the food labels are all the macronutrients, so grams of protein, grams of fat, and grams of carbs. So you can look at a food label, find out how many calories there are per serving, how many grams of carbohydrates they are, because you're trying to stay between 100 and 125, and you'll end up either putting it on an app on your phone or writing it down, and you can add all of that up at the end of the day. You'll know exactly how many carbohydrates you're taking in. So if you're trying to lose weight and you have questions about how to cut carbohydrates from your diet, come and see me at Old Family Medicine of Carmel, and I will help personalize a plan for you.